Ferrell, the CCA workbench here. We're talking about rigs and techniques, and it's a little fishy around here, Davey.
Yeah, well, a little bit. We're talking about sword fishing, and Texas, fortunately, has one of the best sword fisheries probably in the United States. Just a ton of them out there, and they're protected a lot because of the long runs involved to get to them. You know, you got to go 75, 100 miles to get to the good water. When you're targeting swordfish, you want to be in at least 1,000 feet of water, probably a little bit more, 1,200 to 1,500 feet. And there's really two ways to go about catching them: fishing during the daytime on the bottom,
right,
or at nighttime scattered. And the reason you do that is because at night, swordfish make a big migration from the bottom where they spend all day because the sun, you know, they have these giant eyeballs. They're deep water fish. They avoid the light for the most part, although we will find them sunning on the surface sometimes. But most of the time they're in deep water, and in the daytime they're on the bottom. But at night, during the big mass migration of all the little things that come up during the night, the swordfish come up too. And that's when we get a really good chance at them because they're really close to the surface and a lot easier to catch for a lot of guys. But in Texas, you're fortunate because you don't have a lot of current.
Yes.
You know, if you have a knot of current, that's a lot of current. And so you can get away with fishing right on the bottom with like 5 pounds of lead. This is a 10-pound lead. You'd use the same kind of lead, but only about half this weight to fish.
This size.
Yeah, you know, depending, you know, if it's really rough or weather-wise, you might need a little bit more weight to stay on the bottom. But what you want to do is when you're fishing in the daytime is to drop into the 1,400 feet, get it all the way to the bottom. Sometimes you can drag that bait on the bottom, but if you crank it up a couple turns, it's not going to hurt anything probably, because all the fish are on the bottom during the day. And that's why it's so successful in Texas, is because you have the lack of the current and you have all the fish concentrated on the bottom around structure. They're going to be, usually they're, not to say that, you know, you won't catch a swordfish out in the flat plain in 1,000 feet of water, because you can. There are no fences down there and they're wide-ranging fish. But you want to be right on the bottom, and you want to be around some sort of structure, a canyon, even a deep wreck that you know about, you know, some sort of structure, a plateau, anything that'll have an upwelling or something that'll concentrate bait and whatnot. And what you want to do is you want to get out there and drop right on the structure.
Right.
You know, you want to make sure, you know, that you make a big loop and when you're dropping, so you don't get everything tangled up, and put your nose into the current and let the stuff fall down, and then you just keep your nose into the current and bump along, and hopefully you'll get a bite. Now at nighttime, it's a lot different because you can fish. The fish are scattered between 500 feet in the surface.
Right.
So what you'll do, instead of fishing like one bait on the bottom during the day, at nighttime you can fish 3 or 4 baits, sometimes 5 baits if you're a really good guy, and you have, you know, nice outriggers to keep them all separated. But you can fish one at 100 feet, one at 200 feet, and one at 400 feet, and maybe put a squid and or any kind of dead bait.
Big,
you know,
big heavy duty circle hooks.
I like to use circle hooks. There's a lot of fellas, you know, most of the bait that you find rigged are rigged with J hooks.
With J hooks.
You know, but there's a lot of guys who when they fish for swordfish, that's a bonita strip, I think. Anyway, but what they'll do is they'll say that these swordfish have really soft mouths, and they want to hook them deep, and you know, use a J hook to do that. But you know what? The guys who fish for them for a living on long lines use a big circle hook.
Right.
So I think a good circle hook, a little ways, a good ways out in front of the bait, you know, 3 or 4 inches out in front of the bait, because swordfish, they hit things with that bill. Unlike a marlin or a sailfish, they use that bill to kill things with. You know, a sailfish and a marlin, you know, they really don't whack too many things with that bill. They bite things and squeeze them to death. The broadbill uses that bill as a sword. He slashes baits with it. He slashes enemies with it. It's a weapon to him. So when he gets around a bait, if it's a big bait, he'll come in there slashing with that head. And what happens was he'll get all tangled up in that mess. And then you start pulling on him real hard, and all that stuff will come off. And that's how they got the reputation for having a soft mouth. What it is most of the time they get tangled up in it, and we end up pulling out of the tangle. If you get a good circle hook in the corner of his mouth, you're going to catch them.
Tell me about the strobes, Dave. Turn this on.
Yeah, well, I mean, these are, strobe light. They actually come in all different colors. Some of them are just pure green, some of them are pure blue, some flash, some don't. This one does it all. It's a disco. But a lot of guys have preferences for their light. And if you guys been paying attention lately online, they just recently had a big giant squid come in the Atlantic Ocean. They just finally got one for a picture of it, and it came up to a light that's not unlike this. And I think any predator down that deep is going to be attracted to those kind of lights. And that's why we put lights like this, 10 or 15 feet away from our bait when we're sword fishing.
Well, thank you. I like that. I know that a lot of guys are using these lights even during the daytime.
Yes, for sure.
Brie, we're over here flashing.
Still dark down there.
We're flashing, Brie.
I see you flashing over there. I'm flashing my Kubota over here.